Return of the papacy. Revelation 13, verses 1 to 10. Time is at hand. Get ready, get ready, get ready. In the book The Last Day Events, page 15, paragraph 6, Ellen White says, the unfulfilled predictions of the book of Revelation are soon to be fulfilled. This prophecy is now to be studied with diligence by the people of God and should be clearly understood. It does not conceal the truth, clearly forewarns, telling us what will be in the future, not the past. She continues to say the solemn messages that have been given in their order in the Revelation are to occupy the first place in the minds of God's people. There are many who do not understand the prophecies relating to these days, and they must be enlightened. It is the duty of both watchmen and laymen to give the trumpet a certain sound. She says, let the watchmen now lift up their voice and give the message which is present truth for this time. Let us show the people where we are in prophetic history, not to hide what prophecy has for us. She says, let us tell the people, let us show the people where we are in prophetic history. She says, there is a day that God has appointed for the close of this world's history. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Matthew 24:14. She says prophecy is fast fulfilling. She's not saying the reapplication of prophecy is fast fulfilling. She says prophecy is fast fulfilling. Much more should be said about these tremendously important subjects. The day is at hand when the destiny of souls will be fixed forever. There is a time coming that you and I are not going to be able to change our minds and opinion. It is fixed forever. In our study in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 2, 7 and 8 gives us sequential order of events. And we are looking at God unchanging ways. And we see that all throughout the book of Daniel, God begins with the beginning and goes forward in time with us. And in the book of Daniel chapter 7, we see this pattern: Babylon, Media Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, and then we see this papal Rome that received a wound in 1798 because this little horn was stopped. And then we see that a judgment began in 1844, right after this little horn received a wound. But then when we look at Daniel 7, we are still seeing this little horn in the future. And so if the little horn received a wound back in 1798, that means it's no longer there. What is it doing forward in time after 1844? Does the Bible have a prophecy to tell us about this little horn after 1798? In our study in Revelation 11, we see that it began with the investigative judgment. I was given a reed like unto a rod to measure the temple, and we have looked into this prophecy. This is the beginning of the investigative judgment that began in 1844. And then at some point in time, we see there's a little time of trouble, which is the loud cry. And then God is going to pour out his latter rain. There's going to be persecution. But the Bible says after the saints have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended from the bottomless pit, or the king of the north, which we know is the papacy, the little horn, and we know that this event is going to last for about 3.5 years. So it is that the little horn is going to play a part in last days history. Revelation 11 is giving us a sequential order of events going down to the end of time. Again, it shows the unchanging ways of God. God does not go back and forth with us because God is not a God of confusion. Everywhere you turn in prophecy, it begins at the beginning and it goes forward. It doesn't go back and forth. Revelation 13, verses 1 through 10, return of the papacy. Are you ready for what's coming? Revelation 13 verse 1 says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Here we are being given symbols. And in order for us to understand these symbols, we have to go to the Bible to see what these symbols represent. In the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 17, and Daniel 7:23, the Bible says, these great beasts, which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth. So we are seeing that in that paragraph, what we just read, beast represents kingdom. Again, we need to see what sea represents. When we look at Revelation 17, verse 15, it says, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Waters represents peoples, multitudes, and nations and tongues. And some people will say, well, it says waters, it's not sea. So when we turn the Bible to Genesis chapter 1, verse 10, the Bible says, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas, and God saw that it was good. So waters, sea, are synonymous. And then now we need to know what the 7 heads represent. Revelation 17 verse 9 says, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now you have a lot of preachers that are saying these 7 heads are 7 kings. But here the Bible is very clear that the 7 heads are 7 mountains. We ought not to make it sound like the Bible doesn't understand what it's saying. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which this woman sits. This kingdom sits on 7 mountains. In the Catholic Encyclopedia, it says that it is within the city of Rome, called the City of 7 Hills, that the entire area of Vatican is now confined. This is from their own writing, saying that this papacy, this Vatican city, sits on 7 hills. And some people will say, well, it's 7 hills. But when you look at their map, it is monte, mountains. So the Bible is correct. The city sits on 7 mountains. And you're not going to make the 7 mountains into 7 kings. And it goes on to explain the 10 horns as being 10 kings. We find that in Daniel 7:24. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings. So we see the 10 crowns, 10 kings, meaning 10 different nations. So now we need to understand what blasphemy means. When we look at John chapter 10, verse 33, to understand blasphemy, and this word blasphemy is a noma. It represents character. So this kingdom has a blasphemous characteristic. And at the head of it is a man, is a leader that makes himself to be God. And we know John 10:33 says, the Jews answering him, saying, for a good work we stone thee not, but for blasphemy, and because that thou, being a man, makest thyself God. So blasphemy is a man making himself God. So the question is, at the head of this particular kingdom, is there a man that leads it and claim to be God? So we see that the Bible is talking about the rise of the papacy. And we know that rise started in 538 AD. Now, it is very important for us to understand this. The Bible is giving us a sequential order of events that's happening within this particular beast, and it's going down to the end of time with us. Now we're at the point where it rose to power, and this happened in 538 AD. Continuing. Revelation 13 verse 2 says, and the beast, the kingdom which I saw, was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. So this beast, this kingdom, has the characteristic of these previous kingdoms that were before him. Because we know that Greece was identified as a leopard with eagle's wings, and Media Persia was identified with a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth, and Babylon, of course, we know is a lion with eagle's wings. But this particular kingdom, the Bible says, was like unto a leopard, a bear, and a lion. So the characteristic of these kingdoms are cemented in this beast, in this kingdom. We know the vital aspects of the kingdoms of Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece are preserved in the papacy. The priesthood and sacrament ritual of Catholicism were taken directly from the Babylonian cults. Also, from ancient Babylon came the worship of Greek Gnosticism, taught by the church fathers and adopted by early Catholic councils, are still alive today. And we read from an essay of the development of Christian doctrine. This is back in 1920, page 373. And it says, the Catholic Cardinal John Henry Newman gives an extended list of things of pagan origin, which the papacy brought into the church. Why? Constantine, in order to recommend the new religion to the heathen. This is why all these things that you're seeing in the Catholic Church are in the Catholic Church. They had to bring in the paganistic ideology into the church so that both Christianity and paganism would join together in this matrimony. And he continues to say, the use of temples and these dedicated of particular saints and ornaments on occasions with branches and trees, incense, candles, holy water, holidays, procession, sacerdotal vestments, the ring of marriage, images, the ecclesiastical chant. All these things are from paganistic origin. Revelation 13 verse 2 says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So there is a dragon that gives this beast, this papacy, his power. But when we turn the Bible to Revelation chapter 12 verse 9, we understand who the dragon is. The Bible says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So you mean to tell me that the papacy, this Vatican City that sits on 7 hills, the power that governs this particular entity is the devil? On the vacated seat of the Roman Empire arose the papacy, said one historian. The Pope is Caesar's successor. Now we know that Caesar was a pagan. This is head of Anak. What is Christianity? This is back in 1903. So again, we're seeing the rise of the papacy in 538 AD. This is Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. It begins with the rise. So if the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation are one, then the book of Daniel needs to be consistent with the book of Revelation, because Revelation here is showing the rise of the papacy. And now we need to go to the book of Daniel to see how this little horn, the papacy, came to power. And when we turn our Bible to the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, the Bible says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. This little horn, the papacy, came up among them. The Bible says when the papacy rose to power, it came up among them. It did not need to be given power at this point. It is very important that we understand this point. And the Bible continues to say, before whom there were 3 of the first horn plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of men, and a mouth speaking great things. Same characteristic as the beast that we found in Revelation chapter 13. And then when we turn to Daniel chapter 7:25, it describes what did this particular beast or this papacy, this little horn, did within that span of time. In Daniel chapter 7 verse 25 said, these are the things that the papacy will do. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and he shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. We have done all these studies, and we have seen that it is the papacy. So now we're just doing a little revision so that we can understand what is happening in the book of Revelation chapter 13. 1, he shall speak great words against the Most High. 2, wear out the saints of the Most High. 3, think to change times and laws. Did the papacy do all that? And they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and the dividing of time. So this is the length of the period that the papacy will have to do all these things. Did he speak great words against the Most High? Well, yeah, if we're looking at their writings, Ecclesiastical Dictionary, It says, as to papal authority, the Pope is that it were God on earth, sole sovereign of all the faithful of Christ, chief King of kings. This is the title of Jesus Christ. Having a plenitude of unbroken power entrusted by the omnipotent God to govern the earthly and heavenly kingdoms. So not only he's the king of this earth, he's also the king of heaven. Is that speaking great words against the Most High? Yes, it is. Again, they say the Pope and God are the same. So he has all power in heaven and earth. This is Pope Pius V. These are not my words. Again, they said, we hold upon this earth the place of God Almighty. Pope Leo XIII said that. This is back in 1894. In 1895, they said the Pope is not only the representative of Jesus Christ, he is Jesus Christ himself hidden under the veil of flesh. We hold on this earth the place of Jesus Christ. This is back in 1990. Wow. Did they wear out the saints of the Most High? Well, in their ecclesiastical letter, it says anathemize. That means kill, destroy. Those who assert the liberty of conscience and of religious worship, also all such who maintain that the church may not employ force. You see, the devil doesn't care what you do as long as you worship him. In the Catechism of Trent, and it says, and just as this one church cannot err in faith or morals, so this church claims that it doesn't err. But yet, we see that on Sunday, Pope John Paul II will kiss a crucifix and symbolically ask God's pardon for centuries of sins committed in the name of the Catholic Church. You know, at some point in time, when are people going to realize they're being mocked? If the church doesn't believe that they err, and yet the leader of that church is asking forgiveness, that is mocking. This is a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. Did they think to change times and laws? Well, they said in the Prompta Bibliotheca Canonica, Volume 5, the Pope is of great authority and power that he is able to modify, declare, or interpret even divine laws. The Pope can modify divine law since his power is not of man, but of God, and he acts as vice-regent of God upon earth. He can do that because he says he is God on earth. And we know why the Sabbath was changed to Sunday, because in the Convert Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, it says, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? The answer is we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. It is not biblical. And we know that the Bible says different. And here they say that proves to me from the Bible alone that I am bound to keep Sunday holy. There is no such law in the Bible. It is a law of the Holy Catholic Church alone. And they say the Bible says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The Catholic Church says, no, by my divine power, I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep holy the first day of the week. And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. You're not bowing down to the command of God when you go to church on Sunday. You're bowing down to the reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. But my Bible says in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 4, 8, and 9, for he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works. Verse 8, for if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? If Jesus wanted us to rest another day, at some point in his ministry, he would have said it. Verse 9 says, there remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. And which rest day is that? He began to say the seventh day. And we know in Mark chapter 2, verse 27 and 28, the Bible says, and he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for men, and not men for the Sabbath. You see, a lot of people take the Sabbath and worship the Sabbath. You see, the Sabbath was given to you to worship God. The focus here is not the Sabbath. It's not for you to worship the Sabbath. It's for you to worship the Creator of heaven and earth. And then verse 28 says, therefore the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. So Jesus Christ is Lord of the Sabbath. And so when we see that John in Revelation chapter 1 verse 10 is saying, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, he's not talking about Sunday. If Jesus Christ is the Lord of the Sabbath, then John was in the Spirit on the Sabbath day. So, but the Bible tells us that this little horn will last for a time, times, and the dividing of time. We know that the Aramaic word is translated as Eden. It means year. And we know times mean 2 years. It's 2 times. It is from the Jew Aramaic word rather than its plural. Peleg means half. Not only it is the word for dividing, Genesis 10:25, Peleg is also the word for half. So the last part of Daniel 7:25 should be translated a time, 2 times, and a half a time. The Hebrew calendar only operates with 360 days in a year. There is no 0 year. And using a day for a year principle found in Ezekiel 4:6, we can determine the time period for this little horn, for this kingdom. So 1 year equals 360 days, 360 years. 2 years represents 720 days. A day for a year, 720 years. Dividing of times is half a year, is 180 days, 180 years. When you add them all, it goes all the way down to be 1260 years that this little horn would reign. Going back to Revelation 13, but the Bible says, and I saw one of his head as it were wounded to death. We know that history tells us in 1798, French General Berthier took the Pope captive, who later died in exile, which ended his tyranny exactly 1260 years later. So in 1798 AD, the Pope was arrested, which stopped the papacy. So we saw the rise of the papacy, and now we are seeing the wound of the papacy. It's 538 AD to 1798. And the Bible is going forward in time with us. Revelation 13 verse 3 continues to say, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So is the Bible talking 538 to 1798 here? No. It rose to power, received the wound, and it's going forward in time, and the deadly wound was healed. That's future, after 1798. Now, history tells us that in 1798, the Catholic Church not only lost her earthly power over much of Europe, in fact, she was no longer free to carry out her own religious rites, such as choosing a pope to succeed Pius VI. After the final defeat of Napoleon in 1815, Italy became divided into states, duchies, and papal states. This unusual situation gave rise to nationalistic efforts to unite Italy into one country. However, these attempts were met with great resistance from the Catholic Church. That changed in 1860 when the Italian government took over the papal states. But there was one major obstacle left for the creation of one Italian nation: the city of Rome. This Italian vision came true when Italian troops occupied Rome on September 20th, 1870, during the reign of Pope Pius IX. Then shortly after, the Kingdom of Italy was declared. Now, in 1922, amazingly, both Mussolini, the Italian fascist dictator, and Pope Pius XI came to power at the same time. And then in 1929, the Lateran Treaty was signed by Cardinal Gasperi, Papal Secretary of State, and the Italian fascist dictator Mussolini. What does that mean? And then we see that, for those who are questioning that this actually happened, well, the San Francisco Chronicle records this. Mussolini and Gasperi signed historic Roman pact. The New York Times also wrote, mortal wound healed. So we're seeing that these things did happen. So upon this agreement, the Lateran Treaty, the papacy recognized the state of Italy with Rome as its capital. The Italian government in return recognized papal sovereignty over the Vatican City and secured full independence for the Pope. So at this point in time, we are seeing the return of the papacy, because you see the papacy had been given back its power, full independence. So 1929, with the Lateran Treaty being signed, gives rise to the return of the papacy. So we're seeing Revelation 13 verse 1 is talking about the rise of the papacy. And at some point in time, the papacy will receive a wound, and we know that it is in 1798. And then at some point in the future, the wound is going to be healed, and it happened in 1929. Now we're going forward in time. And then the Bible says, and I saw one of his head as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Is that past or future? That is future. After the wound is healed, the Bible says all the world will wonder, will be amazed at this kingdom. So we see the rise, the wound healed, and in the future, all the world will wonder after this beast. In verse 4 in Revelation 13 says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? Now, at this particular time, we need to stop a little minute here and see the devil wants to be worshipped. See, the Bible says, and they worshiped the dragon. See, indirectly, by worshiping this beast, this papacy, this whore, you are worshiping the devil. This is the papacy system. So the rise in 538, the wound in 1798, going forward now, the wound healed in 1929, and all the world wondered after the beast. That's future. Revelation 13 verse 5 says, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Well, if we're going forward in time, if he is to continue, that means this right here is future, not past. The word continue implies that he was already there. This is the little horn. This is the papacy continuing after the wound was healed. Because you see, we saw the rise, 538. We saw the wound in 1798. And the wound was healed in 1929. And now it's being given power to continue. Now, it is important to know this. At the beginning of the papacy did not need power to continue or power to do. It rose to power. The Bible says it came up among them. There was no power given to that papacy at that point. And now in this part here, the Bible says it was given power to continue. That means it was already there. We know that 42 months times 30 days is 1,260 days, is 3.5 years. It matches what we have been studying. You see, God is unchanging. God does not change. See, Revelation 13 verse 6 says, and he opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. He's back doing the same thing again. Verse 7 said, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. This is what is going on today. The transitioning of giving back power to the papacy is happening before our eyes. You see, back in Revelation 11 verse 7, it says, and when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascended out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. It is the same language that Revelation 13 is speaking of. We saw that in Daniel chapter 11:44, but tidings or news or rumors out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. The book of Daniel and Revelation, they are one book. And in these books are giving you sequential order of events beginning at one point going forward in time. It does not go back and forth. So we see the rise, the wound being healed. And then at some point in time in the future, the papacy or the little horn or the king of the north will make war with the saints. Revelation 13 verse 8 and 9 says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And verse 9 says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. So the Bible is saying that all those who worship this beast This papacy system, their names are not written in the book of life. That means you are lost. Verse 10 says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Revelation 13 verse 8 says, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Are you going to be the one to worship this beast, this whore, this little horn, the king of the north, who has been given power by the dragon, the devil himself? You see, Ecclesiastes 8 verse 11 says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Because God has not served them the justice doesn't mean what they're doing is right. God has appointed a particular time for this to end. In the book, The Great Controversy, 88, page 581, paragraph 1, Ellen White says, God's word has given warning of the impending danger. Let this be unheeded, and the Protestant world will learn what the purposes of Rome really are. Only when it is too late to escape the snare. She is silently growing into power. Her doctrines are exerting their influence in legislative halls, in the churches, and in the hearts of men. She is piling up her lofty and massive structures in the secret recess of which her former persecutions will be repeated. Stealthily and unsuspectedly, she is strengthening her forces to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. All that she desires is vantage ground, and this is already being given her. We shall soon see and shall feel what the purpose of the Roman element is. Whosoever shall believe and obey the word of God will thereby incur reproach and persecution. The line of distinction between professed Christians and the ungodly is now hardly distinguishable. Church members love what the world loves and are ready to join with them, and Satan determines to unite them in one body and thus strengthen his cause by sweeping all into the ranks of spiritualism. Papists who boast of miracles as a certain sign of the true church will be readily deceived by this wonder-working power. And Protestants, having cast away the shield of truth, will also be deluded. Papists, Protestants, and worldlings will alike accept the form of godliness without the power. And they will see in this union a grand movement for the conversion of the world and the ushering in of the long-expected millennium. Through spiritualism, Satan appears as a benefactor of the race, healing the diseases of the people and professing to present a new and more exalted system of religious faith. But at the same time, he works as a destroyer. His temptations are leading multitudes to ruin. Intemperance dethrones reason. Sensual indulgence, strife, and bloodshed follow. Satan delights in war, for it excites the worst passions of the soul, and then sweeps into eternity its victims steeped in vice and blood. It is his object to incite the nations to war against one another. This is exactly what we are seeing, for he can thus divert the minds of the people from the work of preparation to stand in the day of God. Return of the Papacy. Revelation 13, verse 1 through 10. Time is at hand. Get ready, get ready, get ready.